So if you do want to use bolster or support with child's, I really like pillows behind the knees. I find if your knees are a little bit finicky, it's nice just to support them. And then if you do have a more firm pillow, this can also be nice to take underneath your belly and chest and just drape yourself over. So this is going to be your more restorative variation of child's pose, which I think is a really nice place to start a practice rather than a really deep, intense stretch. But also if you don't want to use the props, know that you can always place them off to the side and just simply walk your hands forward and bring your forehead to your mat. Okay. So once you've all landed there, we'll just get started. So child's pose it's one of those poses that we really land in that for me feels like a place of safety. So we're kind of closed off from the outside world, that we're able to just kind of fold in towards yourself. That you can kind of tuck away those distractions, the to-do lists. And you can allow your body to rest heavy. So it's not about having to hold yourself up or push through, but about completely unwinding. And so you can allow your eyelids to rest heavy. And just start to acknowledge your breath. So as our practice today is really inspired by our right to feel, we have to invite in first just this feeling of stability, this feeling of being grounded, of being supported, and to recognize that that doesn't come from anywhere else. That this feeling of being centered, of being at peace with oneself, comes from within. And so this is where we start with the breath of just acknowledging that there's this really peaceful, steady rhythm of our body. That exists only within the present moment. So we don't have to worry about losing our breath to the past or anticipating our future breath. That whenever we're feeling a little bit unstable or ungrounded, we just come back to breath in and breath out. And then we just repeat that again, breath in and breath out. And as we continually float along these waves of our breath, that we start to find ourselves letting go of the instability of our day or of our week, of all the things that didn't necessarily work out or go the way we expected. And you just allow yourself to simply land here. Our breath is neutral. There's no good breath or bad breath. There's no right or wrong. It just simply exists as it is in the present moment. And the same can be said really for thoughts or feelings. That there's no good, there's no bad, no right or wrong way to feel. It's just simply the state we're experiencing in the present moment. The thing with feelings and thoughts is we start to attach to them. And that's where they start to feel really volatile, or they feel like they're trespassing our safety, that they're pulling us away from our center. And this is, I think, a lot of the times why it's scary to be vulnerable and to allow ourselves to feel, to allow ourselves to sit with our thoughts, because of that tumbling motion that happens when they get out of control. And so this is just a reminder that thoughts and feelings are just data input from your environment. And when it starts to feel like too much, notice if you've attached. If you've attached to a certain feeling and started to create a narrative out of it, or if one thought snowballed into another and all of a sudden you're on a whole nother continent of thinking. And when you do notice that, as for me it inevitably happens, is it becomes this opportunity to offer compassion, to offer yourself a place of forgiveness for wherever you've jumped to or how far you've gone away from your center, and just to reconnect without judgment, without expectation, just to simply hit that big reset button. So we're just going to take 5 more breaths in child's pose and see if you can find that reset with each breath. Each breath being an opportunity to come back to your center, to let go of your day or your week or your month, recognizing that a lot of these feelings land in the past, and a lot of these feelings are borrowed from the future, and that right here, right now, you have everything you need. You have this rhythm of your breath, and that is enough. Okay. And slowly just begin to peel yourself away from your mat in child's pose, coming to hands and knees. Okay, I always love to shift in a yin practice. So you can take your hips left and right. You can just start to really mindfully wake up your body. If you're feeling some tingling down the backs of the legs, it might be nice to tuck one of your toes at a time and press your heel back, straighten out the leg, and you can play with taking that to the other side. So just to take that movement, especially at the start of the practice, so that we're ready once again to land into stillness. So now that we've opened up the hips, gonna add in a little bit of opening for the heart. So staying with your hips above your knees, melting heart pose. Walk your fingertips away from your body so you land onto your forearms, and then allow your forehead to rest onto the ground as you hollow out through your armpits and you create this curvature from your fingertips all the way up towards your hips. Okay. Now this is where pillows can come in really handy, especially if you have that firmer pillow underneath your chest, so that you're a little bit more supported, that you're still getting the length of the body, the opening of the heart, but you don't necessarily feel like you have to hold yourself up, that you can still allow your body to be heavy and really rooted to the surface of the earth beneath you. So heart openers, if this feels like too much ever, you can also take your hips a little bit further back and you can walk your hands in closer to your body. Another variation you might want to explore, which will get you into the backs of the upper arms, into the triceps, is to bring your palms together in a prayer. Pick your hands up and over top of your head so that your thumbs land to the nape of your neck. And then if you want more sensation, you just simply walk your elbows further and get real heavy through your heart, really heavy through the chest. So we're not going to be here for too long, but just notice already if there's any reactions coming up to this pose, or if you're starting to feel, you're feeling the thoughts come a little bit faster, or they're starting to play on one another. So just becoming aware of that in itself is a sign of growth, a sign of awareness. And when you do feel that, can you just soften into it a little bit? So instead of trying to stay hard around the edges to grip and to fight against the thoughts, the feelings physical sensations of the body, can you relax and trust that your body knows what it needs? And if you need to ease out of that depth, you can always just shift a little bit closer into the center rather than as far spread out as you are. And then maybe you just start to lean a little bit more into your breath to hold you steady through these moments. Heart openers are going to feel really vulnerable in the body because they're this huge opening of the chest, of where our vital organs are stored. And so even just from evolution, we know that we curl inwards when we're feeling unsafe or scared or sad, that we really do start to shield ourselves. And so in these last few moments of your heart opener, can you just start to take down that wall one brick at a time? Start to embrace maybe this possibility that you could be a little bit more open to this moment. That maybe it is okay to be here with our thoughts, with our emotions, and with our breath. And gently begin to walk your hands back in towards your body, lifting your heart away from the ground. And then looking between your hands, begin to step your right foot to the outside of your right hand. Tuck your back toes to lift your knee, and then step your left foot to the outside of your left hand. So you have a bit of a wider stance, wider than hip width distance. Pick up your toes and turn your toes out. Now this is where, if you want, blocks or stacked books can be nice. You're coming to a yin yogi squat or malasana. Okay. So knees will about line up with your toes. If your hips are still quite high here, you can always stack another block. Okay. And then instead of the yang version of this pose where you have a really flat back, we're actually looking for the curvature of the spine. So you'll walk your hands out in front of you and just fold. Allow your chin to tuck towards your chest, elbows draw heavy towards the ground, and you're creating this really rounded shape of your spine. Okay. If you need to come out of this at any point, you'll just pick up your hips and come into more of a fold, and then you can come back down when you're ready. If at all this is just not working for you, you can always play with taking this into a butterfly and then folding there. Okay. What's really nice about malasana is that as you fold, you're creating the drawing down of gravity of your tailbone, and then the curvature of the spine creates that space into especially the low back, which can be a little bit difficult to sometimes get in folds, as we end up focusing more on the back of the legs, the hamstrings, and then sometimes even into the upper back, but the lower back remains neutral. So see if you can allow gravity to draw you down. Again, this won't be a super long hold, but know you can always shift out of it if you need and then come back. Allow your focus to come towards the back of the neck, that your chin is resting heavy in towards your chest, gazes at your belly button, maybe even eyes closed. And then just feel into this. You might feel any shifts or movements. You might feel some judgments of like or dislike coming up. And just remind yourself that the pose is neutral. That the pose isn't inherently good or isn't inherently bad. It's just a neutral shape of the body. And how we think about that pose, how we feel about that pose, determines our experience with it. So it's really important to just recognize what we're adding onto this pose to shape this experience, to allow ourselves to feel that and take any shifts from that knowledge so that we can get a little bit more comfortable, and then just simply let that go and come back to the breath. Okay. Nice, you guys. Okay, we're coming towards the last minute of this shape. And see if you can just stay present for these next 8 breaths. So if you take a count of 4 in and a count of 4 out, a minute passes by in about 8 breaths. So while you feel into all these sensations, can you also just feel into the breath? That your right to feel also includes your capacity to not just feel that one thing, but to also be able to feel into the senses of the body, into different aspects of this experience, even juxtaposing aspects. Take one more giant breath. And then walk your hands, so your hands are under or towards your shoulders, and then you'll press into your hands and feet and then lift your hips up to the ceiling. Turn your toes so that your toes point towards the top of your mat, but your feet are still going to be quite wide. So they're at least hip width, if not wider. Okay. And then take a really deep bend into your knees again. So you're still in that folded shape, this time in dangling pose. We're going to add in a little bit of movement before we land in this shape. Okay, so you can always take your hands onto a block if the ground seems like a far reach from this shape. As you inhale, kick out your right hip and just begin to twist your body over towards the right side. So your right leg is going to be straight, left leg bent. And then as you exhale, come back down, bend into both knees, drape your body. Okay, right hand will replace left. Send your left hip out, left leg straight, beginning to twist open. Left hand can come to your hip or reach up. Okay, let's take one more to each side. So folding as you come through center, and then opening up to the right as you inhale, and then folding back as you come through center, and opening up to the left as you inhale. Okay, if you feel like you need more of this movement, you're welcome to take it. Otherwise, we're coming into that upright fold. Okay, optional. If dangling pose is feeling like a rush to your head, or you find you get headaches, there's a lot of pressure, dangling pose is just the upright variation of caterpillar. What's unique to dangling, similar to yogi squat, is you're getting that drawing of gravity. So it's a decompression of the spine, but know there's always options that you can come down to the ground if you'd like. You can wrap opposite elbows. You could rest your arms onto your prop, or you can just dangle. See if you can really tap into that full surrender of the pose where your legs are going to hold you up because there's a really deep bend in the knees, and then everything else is just drawing towards the earth. And I like to think of this shape as an opportunity to just let the things that you've been holding on to roll off your back. So the frustrations, some of the maybe stuck emotions that you've maybe explored through the start of this practice, or you're just letting release. Allowing your upper body to draw closer towards the ground. At the same time that you feel that ease in the upper body, can you feel the strength of the legs holding you up? The stacking of the bones, creating this stability. Check in with your neck. If you're gazing at the ground, gaze back behind you. Tuck your chin to your chest. All right. Let's just take about 5 more poses here, or 5 more breaths, not poses. See if you can even find a little bit more space in the exhale. The space to just feel this moment, but to not have to control. To feel and then let that pass. And you'll gently take your hands down onto your mat. So you have to take a really deep bend into your knees, and then you'll walk your knees back. Coming to a tabletop, it might feel nice to just shift side to side, forward, back, release the hips. Okay, so I promise all of that compression in the hip was for a good reason. This next pose should feel like a nice release for that, even though this next pose for a lot of people, myself included, can feel like a lot. Okay, so we're coming into dragon. Dragon's gonna be similar to yogi squat, where you stepped 1 foot to the outer edge of the hand. So starting with the right side, slide your right knee forward and then step your right foot to the outside of your right hand. Okay, I actually like to step it a little bit further forward, and then you shift your left hip forward, walking your hands to the inside of your front foot. And then pick up your right toes and point them off to an angle. So usually about 1 or 2 o'clock. Now this is where pillows come in really handy. If that back knee gets sore being on the ground, tuck your toes to lift your knee, place a pillow under, and then drop down. Another really nice way to use this pose is to take that maybe a little bit more sturdy pillow. I actually take it underneath my back thigh, so under the left thigh, so it has a place to rest, or you can slide it up further so that you can fold over top of it. Remember that this is a yin posture, so it's gonna look a little bit different than the lizard we find in a yang practice, because you're here for about 3 minutes. So if we go to that full depth of the yang practice, you might find within that first minute, you're waging a war to stay there. Okay. Now, if this is a lot for your hands as well, you can either walk your hands a little bit further forward or take your forearms onto a prop. Okay. Know that if it's feeling really intense, your mind is racing, that the emotions or the sensations too much, come back up onto your hands, and you'll just shift your hips back and lengthen out that front leg, and then you'll bend back into your leg when you're ready. Okay. And I'm right here with you. I know that this isn't my favorite pose, and I try to let go of that good or bad, or if I like it or not, that there's still some benefits to being in it. Okay. And I think it's a really beautiful opportunity for me even to unwind the ego and the depth that I think I need. Okay, so knowing you can always shift back a little bit, okay, that you're already about halfway through, and that there's an opportunity to just offer yourself some compassion for whatever you're going through in this moment, and even just to find a little bit of strength in the softness. Check in if you're gripping with your fingertips, if you're trying to pull up the mat, or you're white clawing your knuckles and gripping them so tightly that you're losing blood in your hands. Can you just soften into those areas? Often when we feel tension somewhere like in the hips, we have a distraction mode where we try to place it elsewhere. So even though we're working through this tension, shoulders start to creep up, your face might scrunch up. See if you can allow your face to perhaps give off the sense that there's some enjoyment here. So you're relaxing the face. You might even try turning up the corners of your mouth. Okay. And just allowing the rest of your body to be in ease while you might be feeling some very different sensations in the left and the right hips. And that it's okay to be able to feel this and at the same time to still feel steady, to feel the earth beneath you, to know that your body is okay wherever it is. Okay, let's take 3 more breaths. Then even if you've been waiting for this moment for quite a while, still take your time to come out of it, but there's no rush. So walk back up onto your hands, pressing into your hands, begin to send your hips back and straighten out that front leg. You can turn the toes up, or you can point the toes. Maybe allow your body to fold and release any tension that you might have brought into your back, maybe even back of the neck, just tucking chin to chest. And you can stay here for as long as you need. When you're ready, you'll just shift forward enough that you can take the weight into your hands and then slide your right knee back. Okay, always option to switch side to side with your hips, to take little movements. But when you're ready, we're just gonna simply come into the other pose because we're already set up for it. So you can even just walk your right knee, if you had a pillow on it, onto the pillow now. Stepping your left foot forward. If you are using a pillow, you can even just roll up pillows underneath that back thigh, can be really nice. So just having a little bit extra support so you don't have to hold yourself up. And make sure that your left toes start to point out to maybe about 10 or 11 o'clock, and that your stance is a little bit wider, so you can always heel toe the left foot out. But when you look at the left knee, it lands about over the ankle, and that your knee is pointing the same direction as your toes rather than falling in. Even if it's falling out, the foot is kind of rolling open with it, so there should never be any pulling in that knee. And then just begin to settle into a shape that in your deepest self you know is appropriate for your body. Okay, so to let go of that ego of what we think we need and to really just start to explore what we need in this moment. And I think that's a really important lesson for feelings, is often when we think what we think we need is to be strong, to push through, what we really need is to release. We need to feel it, we need to let go. And this is where we end up building up so much thought, so much feeling, so much worry. And so just to check in with, what do you really, really need in this moment? And know that whatever your answer is, that it's perfect. Okay. And as you move through this, just offer yourself those spaces to lean into the discomfort while staying soft. And come back to the breath as that reminder that everything is shifting and moving, so you're not stuck here. You don't have to grip or hold on. Okay, we haven't lost anybody yet, so we're doing good. I always worry with virtual practices that someone's going to be like, dragon or lizard, I'm out. And with that little laugh, we're already halfway through. Okay. So see if even holding on looks a little bit different than it usually does, that maybe it looks a little softer, that you're a little bit kinder to your body. That maybe holding on isn't counting down the seconds, but it's being in the breath. Moving towards the last minute of your pose. Relax your hands, unclench your jaw. Soften through the shoulders. Take that extra pause with the exhale. Three more breaths. you give yourself the space just to be in this moment without fighting against it. And then you'll slowly just start to take your hands to your mat, shift your hips back really, really slowly so you start to feel that release. Your left leg will turn, maybe toes turn up or toes can point. Just straighten out this leg so you release that front line. You might even find a gentle fold, using your hands to support your body so that your back doesn't have to. And then when you're ready, you can shift forward enough that the weight's in your hands, and then just play with sliding your left knee back. Okay, if you need some movement here, I always like to just shift the hips side to side and feel nice to release. All right, you did ask for hips today, so we're gonna do one more. And there's two options with this. So placing your hands onto your mat, spread your fingertips wide. Let's take a down dog just to lengthen the backs of the legs a little bit more. So picking up your hips, let your gaze fall between your feet, and you can pedal this out. So a little bit more of an active transition. I really like to take three-legged variation into what we know as pigeon in the yang practice or swan in the yin. So you can always play with picking up your right foot, bending into your right knee, stacking into your hips to open up through the hip flexor and quad. And then you can gently take your right knee towards your right wrist, right ankle to the left side of your mat. Lower your back knee and untuck your toes. So this should get you a little bit more into the hip flexors, into the glutes, and then it's gonna still keep you in the hip flexors. So just see how you feel in this shape. This is your swan. If it feels like too much in that left hip, come into deer instead. So you'll bend into your back knee, so both legs are at about 90-degree angles, and then in either pose, you're just folding forward. Okay, so play with the shape, knowing that you can always switch it up. From pigeon, you'll just simply roll to your right hip to come into deer. And then with pigeon, if you can, find a place to support yourself. So I really like to support the forehead, and then that way all the muscles along the back of the neck and shoulders can release. Same with deer, or you can even take a bolster underneath your chest if you want to make this more restorative. Okay, so it's just a little bit. You can stack pillows. You can also slide pillows underneath your right hip, and you can fold them up if you need a little bit more support, because in pigeon or swan, you really want your hips square. Okay. And so because this practice is so hips-based, there's going to be a lot of sensation for most of us because hips are pretty tight. So acknowledge the sensation. That's just a part of your present moment right now. That's what your body is experiencing. And you can decide if it's a little bit too much or if you need a little bit more without having to label the pose or the experience. Can you just give yourself this gift to be with these thoughts and emotions, to be with this experience that you're having without having it be anything about you. That the words in your head don't define you. The emotions surfacing don't define you. That these are actually things that you're just acknowledging. And that you have a right to see them and to feel them. And when we can start to name emotions, we can start to recognize what it is we're going through, We give the power back to ourselves, that this is just something we're simply experiencing rather than a part of who we are. So last couple of breaths on this side. Can you let go of any of those attachments to thoughts or to worth or even just to this experience? And just give yourself some room to breathe. And there's lots of ways to shift out of your half pigeon or deer. You can always shift onto your seat or come back to down dog or child's pose or tabletop. So you'll just start by walking your hands in towards your body, and then you can choose. If your leg is feeling like it needs to be lengthened, that's where down dog will feel really nice, stepping your right foot back. If you feel like you need to wash out the hips, shift over to your right hip, take your feet out front. So know that there's no perfect way to ease out of this. We're just slowly allowing that sensation of whatever you were feeling to fade. And then if you did come into your swan or deer from down dog, start there as well, just to create that feeling of balance from the body. So you'll eventually make your way back here. And then when you're ready, your left toes will draw high in towards the sky. You can bend the knee and stack the hips if you want. I always find that a nice precursor. And then you'll take your left knee to your left wrist and left ankle to the right side of your mat. Okay. Untuck your toes and slide your right toes back behind your body. Make sure your hips are square. So that's where it'll feel nice if you want to tuck a pillow underneath your left hip so you're not falling over to that side. Or even a pillow under your right knee if it's a lot for your knee to be on the mat. And then just slowly, you'll begin to draw yourself into that folded shape. And just checking with where you've landed, especially from the start, that it doesn't feel abrasive already. That you're not feeling this need to fight your practice. That it should feel like you almost become one with your practice. That your breath is creating the movement through the pose. That your thoughts have the freedom to just flow. If we go back to this idea that thoughts and emotions are data from our environment, our thoughts and emotions are going to become a lot louder when our environment becomes a lot more intense. And so yin is really this balance of navigating intensity versus space. That we want to create the lengthening, we want to create a little bit of that stress to the connective tissue, to the joint, to create change, but not at the expense of our consciousness. That we don't want to push our bodies to the point that we check out. And so this is where breath work comes in really handy. And just being present for your breath as that reminder that it's okay to feel things. And that even when you're in a little bit of the chaos of thoughts or feelings, your breath is always there to remind you that you are the observer of these things, that you aren't them. And that's why it's okay to feel them. Because they're just data from your environment. And if that data is telling you you've gone too deep, you just simply ease out of it a little bit. You add more props, or you see where you can lean in and soften. Last minute of this pose. So you can find the sound of your breath. Feel the steadiness of your inhales and your exhales. Perhaps allowing yourself to let go of anything you've attached to. And to shift into this space that you're creating in both the physical body and the mind. Take your time to shift out of whatever folded hip opener you've chosen. So you can walk your hands up in towards your body. This time you are going to shift your weight onto your left hip. And you'll just scoop around your back knee. Take your feet out in front and walk your hands back. So you're getting that opening of the chest. And then you can wash your knees left and right, side to side. You might even take your gaze up or back. This is more of a recovery pose, so we're not going to stay here for too long into caterpillar. So similar to when we were in that dangling pose, this is now the seated variation. So extend your legs out in front, and then you can pick up your hips to shift out the soft bits. And so if you kind of wiggle around, you should feel two bones pressing into your mat. So that's your sits bones. Try to keep those rooted down rather than lifting. Okay. And then as you inhale, you can take your fingertips to the ground, press into your fingertips and feel this lengthening of your spine. And then as you exhale, begin to hinge at your hips, and you can walk your hands forward with you. Once you can't hinge anymore with a flat back, just allow your spine to curl and fold. And this is where you can take pillows or props underneath your head. Also might be nice if you feel like your knees want to pull up so that you don't have to hold them without support, is you can take that more firm pillow underneath your knees and just fold. So this looks a little bit more like that dangling pose than caterpillar. Okay. And wherever you've landed, just simply taking 8 breaths. So about a minute in your fold. Should feel nice after the compression of the knees and hips in pigeon to find some length to the backs of the legs. Allow your head to hang heavy, or if it's resting on something, let it press a little bit deeper. Even tucking your chin to your chest is going to get you into the back of the rib cage. Now, if you are loving the shape, if you feel like you need more of this, you're so welcome to stay. If you are ready to come out, you can start to walk your hands up the length of your body. Think about rounding your spine 1 vertebra at a time to come up to straight. And then if you're quite far back your mat, you can shift yourself forward, bending into your knees. If you want props for your twist, bring them to the right side of your mat, and you'll just slowly lower yourself down. Okay. Now once you land on your back, maybe you take a big stretch, maybe you curl in. There's no right or wrong. Those of you that wanted to stay in fold, just stay as long as you need, and then you'll come out and meet us for twists. Okay. So if you are using props, you can take them to the right side of your mat for your knees to land on. You can also take blocks or pillows between your knees. You can think of this as kind of what you do when you're sleeping, just to keep some alignment. But you'll start by picking up your hips and shifting them over to the left. Shoulders stay in the center of your mat. Okay, and then you can bring your feet with you. So those feet are also over to the left. Taking your knees into your chest, just slowly allow your knees to splay over to the right. So there might be some separation. They might not perfectly land on one another. If your knees are lifted and away from the ground, this is where taking in a pillow or a couple of pillows to rest on will be nice. And then arms can come out wide. You could cactus or diamond shape the arms. And then allow your gaze, if it's comfortable, and only if it's comfortable, to drop over to the left side so that your gaze is opposite direction of your legs. Okay. There's this quote from the Seduction of the Minotaur, and I really love how simple it is, but how powerful. That we do not see things as they are. We see things as we are. That one of us or two of us could be in the exact same experience and have very different experiences after, or very different reactions to that experience based on past emotions we've held, past habits, what we call in yoga samskaras, these deep grooves of our lives that we continue over and over and over again. And this is the idea of where karma has really come from, is in samskaras. And that when we repeat patterns of behavior, of thought, of emotion, that we get stuck in them because we don't allow them to leave, and we revisit them over and over. And it's like each time you revisit it, you're digging a deeper hole to get yourself out of. And so just to recognize that when we allow ourselves the right to feel, we also allow ourselves the authenticity of what we're going through, so that we know maybe that we're feeling a little off that day or a little blah. And then it allows us this clearer perspective of what is really happening in this moment. Is it really as bad as I'm making it? Is it something I need to shift, or is it something I can just sit with and let pass? Knowing that my emotions are a precursor to this. It's like when one thing goes wrong in your day, it feels like everything else falls apart. I sometimes wonder if that's not just because we're focusing on the negative aspects, or we're conditioned to only see what we want to see. Whereas when our day starts off really good, it kind of just feels like everything falls into place. And so this is why, for me, it's really important to allow ourselves to feel, to check in with what our environment is giving to us, to be really honest with how we're moving through that, and then to offer yourself that portal of compassion. That we're not meant to feel happy and inspired all of the time. That we don't always have to be joyful and full of energy. That what we're truly seeking is truth. At our core, at our highest being, we're seeking truth. And to accept how we feel is to accept the truth of that data that's coming in. And so can you allow space for that while also recognizing yourself as a bystander that is experiencing this? Take 3 more breaths. And just notice how those breaths feel. Maybe those breaths are opportunities to shift you into your truth. There's absolutely no rush. When you're ready to kind of shift out of this side, you can just slowly bring your gaze back through center. And you'll lift your knees up. Maybe you readjust your props to the other side. Make sure that when you are shifting to the other side, you pick your hips up and over to the right, knees into your chest, and then You can allow your knees to cross your body to the left. Taking all the props and pillows that you need to get comfortable, because I promise you didn't come here to be at war with yourself. And just simply shifting into this space of both comfort and maybe some discomfort. This place of feeling grounded and maybe also uncertain at times. And to know that this is just the truth. We'll always have mountains and we'll always have valleys. And that our hearts are so vast, they can hold on to so much. So we have this capacity to hold on to joy and to hold on to sorrow. And we're meant to have those moments of feeling down and to touch into the depths of our own sorrow, to feel disconnected, lost, maybe not having answers, because this is your portal to compassion. It's a sacred experience where we see ourselves in our truth in that very moment, and we accept ourselves. That we're able to touch our own pain or touch our own joy, and in that it connects us to one another, this human experience. And so as you lay here in your twist known for detoxifying the physical body with the compression of the core, but I always like to think of them as just detoxifying the things that aren't really serving us. Perhaps you also just allow yourself to open your heart to those unloved portions of yourself, the parts we like to tuck away, and you just embrace that side. That in the depths of those dark places, there's so much intelligence, beauty, creativity, and light. Take about 3 to 5 more breaths. And when you're ready, just shifting back through center. Knees lifting away from that side. Moving to Shavasana, this is your opportunity to take any movements your body is craving. If there's a final shape or pose that you feel called to, that this is always available. Okay. And then when you're ready, allowing your body to rest against the earth, fully supported. You can even take pillows underneath your knees if you want that extra support for the low back. And maybe even a pillow behind your head if you want to feel a little bit more lifted. There's no right or way, just right or wrong way to come into this, just finding that place that you feel fully supported, fully comfortable, that you can just be with yourself for a few moments. Really where you just allow yourself to feel free. Free to breathe, free to be. When your heart feels heavy and the world is resting heavy atop your shoulders, when your stomach twists and turns and aches, beautiful friend, sit with yourself. Sit with the feeling stirring deep inside of you. Sit with the hard emotions and the thoughts that come with them. You do not need to understand them. You do not need to make sense of why you're feeling this way. You don't even need to work them out like there's an easy answer at the end. Beautiful friend, you only need to sit with them. You only need to allow yourself room to feel them entirely. You only need to give yourself space and make room in your heart. You don't need to solve any feeling or figure anything out. You only need to sit with yourself. Don't tell me love is something you won't try again. That's just not true. But maybe right now, baby, what you need's a friend. I'm here for you. I will be by your side whenever you're cold, deep in the day of the night, whenever you fall, and I won't change my mind. No, I'll see you through. And I won't give up. No, I won't give up. I won't give up on you. Take a deep breath in and a long exhale, breath out. You can just interlace your hands over top of your heart, laying on your back. Feel the beat of your heart beneath your hands. It's a reminder that you are strong, that despite anything that you're experiencing or going through, this is the unshakable mudra. You are unbreakable. You are unshakable. If you want to stay here for a moment, you're welcome to. Otherwise, you can just gently begin to wake up your body, bringing yourself to a comfortable seat. And truly, so much love, so much gratitude from the depths of my heart. Namaste.